Final hour overdrive continues. Brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Now up on TSN 2. Bryan Hayes, Doug, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles McLennan. We got Darren Dreger coming up here in a few moments. Josh Lewenberg later in the hour. Draft went down last night. Everyone knew who was going first overall. I was talking to some guys today. It would be so great if someone went up and just acted as if they didn't know and picked Connor Bedard, like 28th. The Leafs with the 28th pick, like to select the Regina Pats, Connor Bedard. Just see what would happen if people were like, well, he went first. Oh. Well, then we'll take...
We had him high on our list.
Yeah, we liked him a lot. Yeah. We'll take Easton Cowan then. But first round is over and draft is behind us.
I read a story today about Rick Dudley. Did you hear that story years ago where he tried to draft Alex Ovechkin the year before his draft because he argued about the leap year? Did you ever hear
No, I didn't know that story.
I read this whole story today.
Rick Dudley had some wild stories, didn't he?
Yeah.
Rick Dudley.
But it was like year.
So it was like I got caught down this rabbit hole reading this story, and apparently he tried to run it through Central Registry that like Alex Ovechkin is born, like I believe, the same day as Austin Matthews, like September 15th.
Okay.
But he was like based on the years, like if there was leap years and all that, like he actually should be in this draft.
That's
so he tried
great.
drafting him like the year before he was available. Something crazy.
Here's what I'd want to know, because now you got my mind racing, man. I kind of love that from Rick Dudley. Is if that were the case, would you keep it to yourself if you were Rick and pick him dead last without anyone else realizing that?
Or would you say, first chance I get, I can't take the chance of someone else knowing this?
Like, only I know that actually because of the leap years, Ovechkin is available tonight.
Yeah. Well, it was honestly.
Wouldn't it be a kick in the pills if you had the very last selection and just before you were getting the jersey ready, the guy before you says Alex Ovechkin?
This one's for you, Rick. I know you're all in on the
Hi,
leap
Tricky
year.
Ricky. We know about your tricks.
You and
Honest
your
to God,
short
like
sleeve dress shirts.
I read that today where the year before he was drafted, Rick Dudley took him in the 9th round. Like
he actually
got rejected.
drafted
like something,
him?
It's I've got to go back because it's an athletic article.
That.
It's something crazy where Dudley was like trying to argue that he should be eligible, and he took him just in case that he could argue that. And Central Registry was like, dude, you can't. It's not eligible, and he fought it. Like
that'd be so funny to hear, like, because like heads would be exploding at the draft because the first night, the first round, everyone goes up on the stage. It's a big production. The 2nd through 7th round, everyone's just staying at their table, right, and you just announce it. You got a microphone at the desk, and you're up, and it's quick.
2nd through 7 is your scouting department.
Exactly. And it's moving quickly. Like you don't have 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 15 minutes.
Right.
And by the 9th round, everyone would be asleep. They're like, get me out of here. And there's Rick Dudley. We'll take Alex Ovechkin.
I'm telling you, it's an article even on Bar Down right now. Panthers wanted to draft Alex Ovechkin so bad in 2003, they tried an interesting tactic to land him.
Wow. Like we got to find that audio and video then of Rick Dudley picking Alex Ovechkin when he wasn't draft eligible.
It's something like that. I skimmed the article,
I got a lot of
but
appreciation.
We've got to dig
Dudley.
dig into that tonight.
Yeah.
And maybe like report on it tomorrow or like revisit it tomorrow with the facts because I don't want to like speak out of turn. But I was reading it today going like, this is crazy. Mm-hmm. But he had argued because of leap years that September 17th
just insane.
He should be eligible because the cutoff is the 15th. Something ridiculous.
It is. Right. I think
because that's what Austin Matthews and McDavid think.
Yeah, he's the same age as McDavid and Eichel.
Right. Like that's the thing. Like Matthews was a year later because of 2 days.
That's right.
So this was Ovechkin a year later because of 2 days.
What could have been if Rick Dudley found a way to make that happen?
Man. It's something crazy. I don't want to speak out of turn, but it's something like that.
Yeah, we'll find it.
Which is awesome. Like, I love the creativity. Like, we'll try it and see if we can swing it through. Like, that would be awesome.
That would be, I love that. Just, I'm picking this guy. I'm doing it.
Chose Bedard last year.
Yeah, why not?
Like, we're going to try it.
We're going to try it on the record. We got him. If somehow this flips, the record shows Rick Dudley.
But do you lose your pick Does the league go, you're being stupid?
Well, at some point, yeah. Like the leagues, you got to have GMs that understand. You can't just go rogue.
Yeah.
It's not possible. Here's Darren Dreger, our TSN Hockey Insider. What's happening, Dregs?
Oh, I'm just going through a sea of humanity here at the Nashville airport trying to get back to Toronto. There was a thunderstorm that rolled through here, and I don't know how many flights have been canceled, but it's mayhem, but surrounded by a bunch of good hockey people, so hopefully we get out and everything will be fine.
Yeah. Any scoops going on down there? Any trades going to happen at the Nashville airport?
Well, I mean, we were all hopeful, I think, that it would be a lot more active at the draft. That was not the case.
We were too, Darren.
Yeah, I get it. But you know what, fellas? It's just another example of how little money there is in the system and how punitive the salary cap is. Like, some of these bigger names in play, it's crazy what is going on around them. Like, I'll use Connor Hellebuyck or even Noah Hannafin as good examples. I mean, these are high-profile players. Hellebuyck is obviously a Vezina Trophy winner. New Jersey would love to add him. He'd love to go to New Jersey. But New Jersey, because of their salary cap, they've either got to move pieces, which they don't really want to do because it's going to hurt their team, or they've got to find a third party to broker money, or they need Winnipeg to retain salary. Well, if you're the Winnipeg Jets, are you retaining salary on Connor Hellebuyck? And we're talking about 1 year, right? Because he's got 1 year remaining at 6'2", and then you got to wrestle with whatever the extension is going to look like. And that applies to pretty much every one of the bigger name players that we've been speculating on leading up to this week in Nashville.
So, Darren, is there a chance that some of these guys are just going to be called or meetings and said, like, you're just staying, so chew on it?
Yeah, obviously they're going to be open for business, but let's use Craig Conroy and the Calgary Flames as an example, right? They're talking to a lot of teams. There's lots of people that have interest in Noah Hannafin, but nobody has stepped up to a place where Conroy and company would even consider making a trade. So that doesn't change. What are you left with? Well, you're left with Noah Hannafin coming back to training camp and seeing where it goes from there. And then, maybe the Flames have a good start. Maybe he has a change of heart and you find a way to extend, or you make that tough decision at the trade deadline, so that he's not walking out the door for free. But I got to tell you guys, then you extend into what we're going to face on Saturday. It's not a real deep free agent pool. I mean, there's some interesting pieces, Orlov, of course, and go down the list of forwards. But again, because of how tightly wound each club is financially, it's going to be tough on some of these player agents and some of these players. They're either going to have to take less term, maybe a little bit less money, or more term and less money. So it's going to be a fascinating next few days.
Dregs, I've been promising all hell to break loose.
Yeah.
Is there a way that maybe one of these dominoes do break and all of a sudden you do see something where it's like, okay, they were able to make that work? Because I guarantee you in the last couple days, there's probably been a lot of chatter that has come across your desk as far as potential trades, potential scenarios. But at least, don't you think at least one or two potentially might come to fruition?
I do. But maybe you do have to get through Noodles. Maybe you have to get through July 1st. Once Dmitry Orlov goes, does that loosen things up on the teams that didn't get Orlov? Now they swing back on Noah Hannafin. What's going to happen with Brett Pesce and the Carolina Hurricanes? Now, there's no urgency around Brett Pesce, but maybe that trade scenario starts to show itself because they're not close on an extension. They don't need to be. They can be as patient with Pesce as Calgary might have to be with Noah Hannafin. But, I mean, there are scenarios that could absolutely be in play. But because the predicament of certain clubs, like Philadelphia tried to give Travis Sanheim away. And not because he's not a good hockey player and not because that they don't value him. The problem is his no-trade clause for the next 4 years kicks in on Saturday, July 1st. And teams are looking at Sanheim and going, well, all right, we think he's going to be a good defenseman, But are we sure that he's not going to have the type of year that he had last year? So maybe when those type of pieces roll out, if they roll out, that'll loosen things up. But I'm telling you, go back to Winnipeg here again. You know, I mentioned Hellebuck and the interest potentially from the New Jersey Devils. There has been little or basically no interest in Mark Scheifele. There's been tire kickers. You know, if you look like at a team like the Boston Bruins, as an example, who have also kicked tires of Noah Hannafin, you know, Boston may have some big shoes to fill if Patrice Bergeron doesn't come back, or, you know, we know David Krejci is unlikely coming back, but they don't know that right now. They don't have that pure definition. So, you know, jumping on board with Winnipeg and trying to make a deal for Mike Scheifele might be more complicated given what his future might look like. So it's all tied back to money again, guys.
Yeah, it's a very consistent theme here over the last couple of weeks. Money not being available, which means you can't make deals, and the amount of no trade clauses that are wreaking havoc on potential trades as well. And you mentioned Travis Sanheim. Somehow Sanheim has got a no trade. Why wouldn't he? The whole league does. And I'm curious, Dregs, if it's going to get to a point here soon, or even though it was the GMs that handed all of these out, and I think in retrospect, a lot of them look terrible. Yeah. Are we going to get to a point where GMs around the league say, screw it, we've got to make lives uncomfortable? Like, even though we gave you the no trade, we have to get you out of here. And basically, we're going to go against the no trade. Like, is it possible that's coming to the NHL? Because so many players have them, and they're stopping so many deals.
Well, some have tried, though, Brian, right? Like, look at Doug Armstrong and the St. Louis Blues. They got snagged up by Torrey Krug, not willing to wait. Otherwise, we're not talking about Travis Sanheim because he's property of the St. Louis Blues. Yet, you go back to the reason that one of the primary reasons Alex Pietrangelo didn't stay in St. Louis is because the Blues wouldn't give him a no trade or a no move. So they dug in at that point, and, you know, Petro wanted to protect his family. That's what he was most interested in. And that's normally the case when you're handing out those sorts of protection clauses. Top-end players are always going to have the leverage. They just are. If it comes down to a player walking versus giving him that trade protection, I don't think that the NHL is going to be able to rule that out at any point.
Yeah, it just, I don't know. Like the cat's out of the bag now, right? It's out.
Yeah.
They're everywhere, and it just it really wreaks havoc. And when you just don't have any cap space, you know, we were talking last hour, Dregs, about we're waiting for Brad Treliving to make a Brad Treliving move, like put a stamp on this team because it hasn't happened yet. And I'm curious if he even has the flexibility to make it happen if he wanted to.
Yeah, I think he does. And I actually was sitting beside Craig Button when you guys had that conversation. There's certainly an appetite from Treliving's perspective to do that. But he acknowledged very early that his priority was to look after the big extensions, and that's Austin Matthews and that's William Nylander. Well, as Pierre LeBrun reported in our wrap-up coverage here from Nashville, you know, Nylander is getting a lot more complicated in the very near future. I don't think that Toronto is worried when his modified no-trade clause kicks in. I think they're more worried about, again, repeating ourselves here, what's the market going to be for William Nylander? How significant is it going to be? It may not be that significant. So, you know, if you're proposing trade because, you know, the player and the agent just want too much money and you cannot find a fit or a happy medium for the Maple Leafs and Nylander, and that's Nylander's right. He's got some swagger and some pop on his side of this transaction. Mm-hmm. All right, well, don't you need something fairly significant back in return? And the answer to that should be yes. Yes, you do. But if the market isn't there to get it because people don't want to pay him $10.5 or $11 million or what his demand is, then that becomes a bigger challenge. But look, Kelly McCrimmon made an excellent point after trading Riley Smith. Vegas Golden Knights didn't want to trade Riley Smith. They didn't. But they looked at Ivan Barbashev, probably knew they were going to get him at the same value at $5 million. And they look at Barbashev as being a better player for what they're trying to do, and that's defend the Stanley Cup. And they trade Riley Smith for nothing more than cap relief. Mm-hmm. So a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs is probably going to have to go down that path very soon, and it might end up at the expense of a very good player.
Man, oh man, because Yeah, it's becoming more and more like the NFL. You kind of knew it was coming, where guys are just basically getting cut, like big names, good guys. Right. And what you need is you better have a farm system. You better have a draft, and that's what also doesn't really connect, because the high-end teams are trading picks, they're trading prospects. They don't have any money. They have no flexibility.
Crazy.
It is, and when it comes to Willie. Like Nylander, he proved the last time he was up. He was up as an RFA. He did something that, to my knowledge, no other player has done in NHL history. He sat at home and said, "Call me 10 minutes before the deadline.
Yeah.
I'm not coming. Like, I'm not doing it." So if he was willing to do that, and that took stones. It took stones. If he was willing to do that as an RFA, why would he be bullied into taking something he doesn't want when he's going to be a UFA? I don't think it's good. I don't know. Like, I obviously you sell him on it. You try to, but if he believes he's worth 10 and a half, that's what he thinks he's worth. I don't know if he's going to change his mind.
You've got to trade him if that's the case. Sorry.
Well, and it's pretty obvious here too, right? Louis Gross. He's one of the better agents in the sport, period, right? And then you've got Michael Nylander, who's been down this road more than once as a player, and also has an agency over in Sweden. And then you've got the experience of Brad Treliving, who went through this with Louis Gross and Johnny Gaudreau last summer. So it's, the difference, I guess, being, Gaudreau just absolutely walked. But that was a tough offseason for Treliving and clearly a tough offseason for the Calgary Flames. They're just not going to go down that road again. They're not. So unless Nylander softens, and we're all going to speculate on what we think the term and the money is, and nobody knows for certain. I was just told that it's a lot, and it's too much. So if that changes, maybe something else shifts.
That's not a good.
A lot. That's too much.
A lot and too much is not a good, situation where it's like.
It's like drinking.
Yeah.
Can't do it.
A lot and too much. That's
a lot and too much.
How about the shout-out? Is there more shout-outs for Tootsies there than anybody per capita?
That was awesome. I said to Billy Guerin, who's one of my favorites, right? He's just got a great sense of humor. I said, you know what? I'll give Kevin Cheveldayoff off, the acknowledgement of making the biggest splash in the course of the week because he traded Pierre-Luc Dubois to L.A. But I said, as far as the draft goes, the best part of it was Billy Guerin acknowledging Tootsies in front of the group there, and then Treliving following it up and sticking Guerin with the bill on. And, hey, full transparency, fellas, I was at Tootsies for 2.5 hours only because I was forced to be there for TV. I was a good boy this
Hard working.
Attaboy. Look at you. All right, Dregs. All grown up. We love to hear it.
That's why they don't send me to Nashville anymore.
I don't believe you.
Yeah, I have a tough time believing that, Dregs, too.
Yeah.
Wow, Noodles, I spent about an hour and a half at Gibson's Garage, which is the mother store of Gibson's guitars, as you probably know.
I've been there.
Took us back. Yeah, oh my. I mean, that's as good as anything I've ever seen in Nashville. So I'll be back there. It was a good time.
Yep, it's a good spot down there. Safe travels, Dregs. We'll see you in a couple days.
Yeah, you bet, guys. Thank you.
Darren Dreger, TSN Hockey Insider.
You can go in Nashville where they make Gibson guitars. And it's just, you want to talk about legends. Every great guitarist has had a Gibson at some point.
Sure.
I bought one that was like still raw. Like you can buy it, but they hadn't finished it. It's still like raw wood and everything. They just sold it to me. It was pretty cool. I have it at the house. I'm not good on it, but it's pretty, if you love music, obviously, and love live music, Nashville's
just a great spot.
You
I've been there. It's a great spot. It's a great spot, and they like music, like you said, and it's a great sports town. They got the Preds there. They got the Titans.
Would have been cool to be there. Every other show like ours was there.
Well, maybe next year. I don't know where the draft is next year.
Isn't it in
Toronto?
No, the All-Star Game's in Toronto.
All-Star Game's in Toronto. So
you know what? Maybe we'll go to the All-Star game.
There's a chance we'll be there.
We'll be at the All-Star
Maybe
game.
We'll get the email. We're sending you guys to the All-Star game.
Hilarious.
Yeah. Pack up your bags, boys, and jump on the TTC.
Yeah.
You're heading down. Did you just say Vegas? The draft is in Vegas next year? Correct.
That's what I thought it was.
Okay.
Yeah. We're going.
Yeah, Vegas is no fun. We don't need to go there.
Yeah,
We're going to Vegas.
You think
It's
so?
just weird. Every guy that like does a podcast in his basement, they're at the draft, they're at the awards, and we're not.
Well,
it's an
Matter.
interesting
We're going
concept.
next year.
Hey, it's all
We're
good.
going next year.
We
all
say
good.
that every year.
Yeah, we're really doing it here.
This year we
Let's
are.
just go ourselves and do the show from a hotel room. What the hell are they going to do?
Well, that's possible.
I think
we
that'd
could
be
bring
great.
the stuff down.
We can go down. We got our travel rigs.
Yeah.
Go down there and we'll put a show on.
We'll get our own guests. We'll put a show on.
You will have your tracksuit on, and you will be at
Oh, yeah, the
off-track
casinos. Yeah, it's not even off track down in Vegas, man. You can go in there at any time.
betting. That's true.
And they're very welcoming at the sports books. The hospitality.
You just have to bring cash.
Yeah, as long as you
Remember
got
he tried
cash.
to use his card, and they're like, "Sorry, get the hell out of here."
As long as you got cash, they really, really like you in Vegas.
Exactly.
Funny how that works. Once you don't have cash, they don't really like you so much.
Not so much.
Yeah, all of a sudden, the hospitality kind of dips a little bit.
Dries up.
Dries up a little bit. Speaking of cash, we were talking about these reports of Fred VanVleet and what he could get in Houston. We'll ask Josh Lewenberg about that. And if Fred leaves, what does it do with the Raptors moving forward? How can Masai possibly explain what happened at the trade deadline? That more coming up with Josh. Our best bets brought to you by FanDuel. OverDrive continues, TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, Josh Lewenberg here in a moment. We referenced the Keith Hernandez comment about the number 17. Shohei Ohtani, who wears number 17. Ohtani's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. You just want to hear what Keith Hernandez had to say about the idea of him, gifting his number to Ohtani if you're willing to come to New York.
I have had half a dozen people ask me this question. If Ohtani were to sign with the Mets, would you allow him to wear his number 17?
Well, they couldn't.
Well, with your permission, he could.
Don't ask.
Okay. I will drop the subject right there. Here's the way I look at it, Keith. When you came to the Mets, 37 had been retired, and you had to adjust.
Yeah, I did.
I'm sure Ohtani, seeing 17 hanging from the rafters, he could adjust to.
Well, I'll stay out of the conversation.
No reason to have any more discussion. It's in the rafters, and in the rafters it will stay.
I love how he's like,
He's not
first
taking a
comment
bait.
is the best one. Well, he can't.
Yeah, he's incredulous. He's like, well, obviously that's not possible. It's retired. And then,
but he was trying to double down and be like, well, you can actually give it to him.
right?
Like, no,
It's like they're trying to get him going. He's like, I'm not biting.
Yeah.
Like Ohtani, this will be a story too, even though it's completely hypothetical, right? Like Ohtani's not a free agent yet. He's not going to the Mets, but now Met fans will be like, Hernandez is screwing us out of possibly getting Ohtani.
And there's a certain line, like even when players, a veteran kind of status player gets traded to a team, and it's like, where's the line where a young guy who's been in the league a couple of years has got that number, and the right thing to do is say, hey, man, you can have the number. But it's like, if you're kind of a young stud, do you give it up, or it's greasy, man?
Yeah, it's tough.
I'll tell you, a lot of Rolexes get exchanged. I don't know, maybe even a car.
Yeah.
You give me the number, and I'll do something nice
well, with
for
the
you.
amount of money that's going around, it should be a boat or something like that. But it just, I don't know.
Well, how uncomfortable would it be if it's, I'll get you a Rolex, give me the number, and it's and the comeback is, it's going to take more than the Rolex.
Yeah, it's a house for my kid.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot more.
Well, he's the guy, if Ohtani gets $600 million or whatever.
If I'm Keith Hernandez, I would say, buy me and my family all new houses and Rolexes and Range Rovers.
It's serious.
Dude,
I don't.
$600 million. Who cares?
I don't think. I don't know if that happens. Like paying off players who have a retired number that are willing to give it up. Like it's one thing if a new guy gets to a team and there's a veteran that already has the number, then that's where okay, it's a Rolex, it's something else.
Dude, it's disrespectful to even if you're going in. Let's say Ohtani went to the Mets. If he even considered 17, it's disrespectful, in my personal opinion.
Well, I agree, and it's not possible. Like, it's not like the Met. That's on whoever runs the clubhouse to say it's retired,
right,
before it even gets to Keith Hernandez.
Well, he would know before he signs or be like, oh, my number's not available. I'm gonna have to go to 71 because he'll switch it around or whatever.
Right.
Bedard's 98, right? Are we clear with that?
I believe so, but I thought the same thing. Like, if he was 88, he can't wear that in Chicago.
Right.
No.
But
and never would. He's smart enough not to do that.
I thought about this. You've got Gretzky at 99. He's a 98, and McJesus is 97. What was the thought process in 98?
I'm not sure. I don't know why he was number 98.
Yeah, I
don't like the way 98
asked.
looks. It's too like. I think he should be like 92.
That's you.
Of course.
No, obviously he can give 92 a life that it never had. Although it had a pretty good run.
It had a good run, but I'm just saying, like, I'd have to look back, but like, has somebody asked him the significance of the number 98?
I have no idea.
Do we know the significance of McDavid's 97?
Well, he's born in 97,
Okay,
I
so
thought.
then fair enough. That's the easy one.
Like, that's like 87 was Sid.
Right.
Right? Like, it's
7, 87. Yeah. 8.7, all of that.
All that kind of stuff, your favorite number or whatever. But, yeah, I don't know. I don't think the Mets are going to have to be too concerned. I don't think Ohtani's going to the Mets. Has he been seeing how they're playing? Right? Like, you're going to leave the Angels, who can't do anything, to go to the Angels of the National League in New York. Right. Go to the Mets. Mets are a mess. You see Steve Cohen came out and spoke to the media? That's what you want of your Bucks Showalter, the owner setting up shop.
Is he starting to go Dan Snyder on this or what?
Well, yeah. I mean, listen, they have the highest payroll in baseball. He's very hyperactive. You know, he's been online and all that. They're 8.5 games out of the wild card.
It's
the
not
Mets.
Good.
8.5 out of the wild card.
And they're having these disastrous losses where they're up by 6 and they end up getting smoked.
Just a mess.
They're a mess.
And it's like Buck is out there with his tight pants on and his tight tuck and his black baseball cleats, and he looks like he looks so out of place, man. Yeah. He looks like a dinosaur, and he's got a Scrabble face, and he does not know what the hell to do.
Because he's nonchalant too. They keep asking him, like, "Is this a big series?" He's like, "No." And Met fans are freaking. They're like, "How is it not?
Yeah,
you're 8.5 out of the wild card."
Bucky is losing it.
Bucky's got to figure it out. All right, here's our Raptor reporter, Josh Lewenberg. He's going to be a busy man the next few days. What's happening, Josh?
Not a whole lot, guys. Just taking a break from the baby talk and changing diapers to talk NBA free agency with you guys.
Attaboy, congratulations.
Hey,
congratulations.
How's it going, buddy? How's the diapers, sleeping, all that stuff? Tell us.
It really puts the rest of the stuff in perspective, right? Like, where Fred VanVleet goes, maybe not as important as making sure the baby is fed.
Yeah, that I would suggest that's probably a good game plan, Josh, especially if you want your wife to, continue to allow you to be in the house.
Yeah.
You might want to make sure that the baby's fed. But this Fred stuff's getting wild, man.
Yeah.
What is your understanding of this Rockets proposal? Because I'm reading 2 years, 83, 84 million, basically a bully offer. And the Raptors they can't compete with that kind of money on a per on an annual basis. But what do you read into these reports?
Yeah, there's a lot of chatter out there, as there is every year at this time. I've spoken to a few people over the last few days that aren't fully buying the Fred to Houston chatter. And I can see why, right? Like, we know the guy well enough by this point to know winning means a lot to him. He's won everywhere he's been and at every level he's played, basically with the exception of 2 of the last 3 years, the Tampa year and last season. And we know that those 2 seasons were torture for him. He didn't have too much patience for the losing and the developing and all of that stuff. So, yeah, it's a little bit hard to see him going to a Houston program that's even further away from contention than the Raptors are, a young team that also, by the way, has had some pretty public locker room chemistry issues over the last few years as well. So it's a strange fit. And I'll also say this because, again, there's always a lot of chatter at this time of the year, and there's usually a reason why this stuff is out there. And I'll suggest one potential reason here is that if people are talking about the Rockets potentially cutting this big fat check for VanVleet and maybe Fred is interested, if teams believe that, if the Raptors believe that, Well, that's not a bad thing for his leverage at this point. I'm sure him and his representatives are actually pretty happy about that. So maybe that's what this is just a leverage play. But we'll see, because money talks, especially for a business-savvy guy like VanVleet, who literally wears bet on yourself across his chest. Maybe, to your point, the Rockets just make this bully offer that either he can't refuse or the Raptors aren't willing or able to match. And then all of a sudden he's got a big decision to make, because it might end up being Houston with a really high annual salary, higher than anybody would have possibly expected, especially as Fred had his up and down year last year, versus the Raptors, who can give him and probably would offer him more money overall and in the longer term, but a smaller annual salary. I think that's what it might end up coming down to. And I find it hard to believe that he would choose the rebuilding side of it, especially if the Raptors' plan, I would assume they would share that plan with him when they meet with him tomorrow, is to be competitive moving forward.
Yeah, and that's where I'm not sure how Fred will respond to that, Josh, because if you're bringing the band back together, they finished 9th in the East. And they lost the play-in game. How convincing can Masai be that the Raptors are actually like a championship caliber team over the next year or two? Yeah,
I mean, he's going to have to present Fred with something a whole lot different than what he's presented to us over the last few weeks. Understandably, right? Like, Masai's not going to show us all of his cards, but he's probably going to have to show Fred a few of those cards, right, if he's going to sell him on it. At the same time, as I said, I don't think the Houston situation is any better. They're even further back, right? At least the Raptors, and I know Jalen Green, they've got a few really good young players. At least the Raptors can say, all right, we're 2 years into the Scotty Barnes thing. We've got Pascal Siakam, obviously, who, I mean, you can say what you want about Pascal Siakam and whether or not he's the number one guy, but Fred and Pascal are very, very close. As close as DeMar and Kyle were, I don't know, but I think the idea of the devil you know in this case might be better than the devil you don't if you're Fred. Unless, of course, we're talking about this as like an A versus B sort of thing, but Fred he's going to be in high demand here over the next 24, 48 hours, and there are probably other teams that we're not talking about right now. I don't know about from a cap space perspective, but that was always sort of how I envisioned this going into free agency, and I think the Raptors kind of looked at it like this at the trade deadline as well when they opted not to deal him, is that there are going to be some teams with cap space, teams that aren't very good, that are going to throw a lot of money at him. But the teams that I think might be most interesting to Fred from an actual competitive standpoint are going to be the teams that can't offer him the major money, but might be interested in playing ball with the Raptors in a sign and trade type situation. And maybe we're not talking enough about those types of teams going into this, because I could see that popping up here where the Raptors say, all right, well, let's see if we can, kind of like with Lowry, help him get to where he wants to go so we can get something back in return. And maybe VanVleet wants to go somewhere where he does have a cleaner path to contention than he would have, obviously, in Houston and certainly in Toronto as well right now.
J-Lou, Scotty Barnes, he's kind of a key piece moving forward, his development. When we're living in a world now where we've been talking about it for months now, it's turning into, in every pro sports league, the haves and have-nots, where you want to play, whether it be north of the border. And if guys start leaving and it's what's the view or the vision of the Raptors from other guys around the league coming up to Canada, the taxes, and it's if you don't have that stud to attach it to where you say, I want to hitch my wagon to Scotty Barnes, it could be a long time without players wanting to come here.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty hard to sugarcoat it. The Raptors, they are in a situation where, Scotty Barnes, it's make or break, right, for them. They're very much tied to his individual success in terms of finding any kind of real, legitimate, sustainable team success right now. And I don't know what kind of a sales pitch that would make to VanVleet, because let's face it, Scotty Barnes is the most important player on this team. He's more important than Pascal Siakam, not better than Siakam right now, not better than VanVleet right now, but he's the most important player on this team. I don't know if that's something that would be appealing to Fred as a point guard to be able to sign on long-term with a team that has an intriguing young guy like that, if he looks at it and says, because there were moments last year where Fred, as we know, was not really happy with his role, taking a bit more of a back seat as more of a facilitator. He played it well at times, but it was a clear adjustment for him. So I don't know what the answer is in terms of whether or not he'd be okay with that. But yeah, in terms of Scotty, like he needs to develop into that superstar caliber player that they think he can be and hope that he will be if they are going to be a contender in the foreseeable future, because it really is. I mean, it's tough to foresee any other path to finding that guy, and it's really, really tough to win in the NBA if you don't have that guy. So if you're not signing that guy, and the Raptors haven't in their, 28 years, something like that, like almost 3-decade-long history, they've never signed somebody else's superstar player. They've retained their own guys. They haven't gone out and signed that guy. And unless Masai has that trade in the works, that going out and getting that Kawhi type, they need Scotty to become that guy. And they've already, like the recruiting process in terms of keeping him happy, making sure this is a place that he's happy in and wants to be long-term, that started almost the moment that they drafted him. It would be really hard. I mean, he's going to be with the Raptors for a while. Even when he becomes a free agent, he's going to be restricted. It's very unlikely that a restricted free agent ends up going elsewhere. Like, we're probably looking at like 7-8 years of Scotty Barnes. But yeah, I mean, it's important here that they make him happy and that he becomes that guy, and as quickly as humanly possible too, because we know what happened last year. I don't think it was quite as bad as some people thought, but it certainly wasn't a step up from his great rookie year.
With Josh Lewenberg. So if there's truth to Fred walking here, and it doesn't include a sign and trade, I'm curious how disaster, right? Like, and all I can think of is the trade deadline. Like, they traded to get Poeltl. They were buyers when the whole world suggested they should have been sellers. Then they won a bunch of games and moved back in the draft when we all know who was sitting there at the top of the draft this year. Like, if Fred walks for nothing, and I guess it's possible Poeltl walks for nothing, like, this feels like a rock bottom situation for Masai Ujiri and company.
Amateur hour.
It would be. It would be probably the worst thing that has happened to him as an executive in the league from an asset management standpoint, certainly, right? Because, like, they've already lost 4 guys from that championship team for nothing. And I can actually look at that individually at a case-by-case basis, given the unique circumstances, and give them a pass on each one. Obviously, Kawhi, like, that was a 1-year gamble. They tried to keep him. They didn't. Like, okay, I get that. Danny Green, same thing. Serge Ibaka and Marc Gasol, they were getting older. The Raptors wanted to maintain cap flexibility in the hopes that Giannis would be out there in 2021. So, like, I get those. Those are excusable. This would be a disaster. And again, like, there's no sugarcoating that. And yeah, I would look back at the trade deadline. You mentioned buying on Poeltl, but like specifically the decision not to sell on VanVleet would be the one thing that I would circle there. And I don't think there were great offers that were out there, but you could have gotten something for them. But I think, listen, I know the Raptors were very confident at the time of the deadline that they could keep him if they wanted to. They knew they had a pretty good idea that it was going to cost a lot, but they were confident they could keep him. They're still confident, by the way, that they will be able to keep him. But they also believe that if he were to walk, and I alluded to this earlier, that the teams that he would want to go to were teams that wouldn't have the cap space to sign him outright and would need to play ball on the sign and trade. And they believe that they could get as much or more than they were being offered in February here in the summer in a sign and trade situation like they did with Lowry. And that worked out pretty well, right? Like, they didn't get a ton for him, but getting Precious Achiuwa back in a sign and trade when you normally get very little to nothing back in a sign and trade is pretty good. Not great asset management, especially if Fred ends up leaving and the only thing you end up getting for like 6 guys from that championship team is Precious Achiuwa. That would be bad. But again, to lose a guy that's a year removed from being an all-star, one of the faces of the franchise, your leader on and off the court for nothing, without the cap space to actually go out and replace him in free agency, like, that's the type of thing that sets a franchise back years.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I couldn't put it better myself. And
Light years.
That's what we could be facing over the next 2 or 3 days. And, if and when that happens, they're going to have to recalibrate, and there's names like Gabe Vincent out there and other. I think it'll be a significant drop-off. It will be a significant drop-off. And at that point, who knows where it goes. But, Josh, you're a busy man, so we'll let you get back to it, pal. We appreciate you doing this. Thank you.
All right, guys. Talk soon.
Josh Lewenberg, our Raptors reporter. Yeah, free agency kicking off tomorrow night.
That'd be a failure, man. Like, you lose him for feathers.
Yeah, if Fred just walks, and he's entitled to that. He's a free agent. He opted out. If he walks and just takes the money and they get nothing for him, and Pirtle could do the same thing, it has not been a good run for Masai Ujiri. Like, the last couple of years, Masai and Bobby Webster, they made the Scotty Barnes pick, which looked great, and I still think that will turn out to be a great pick.
Right.
But in terms of asset management, last year they didn't do much. They signed Otto Porter. He got injured. You can't really blame him for that, but he brought nothing to the team. Wow. Trade deadline, they did nothing. They were buyers when everyone on earth thought they should be sellers. Not good.
Dude, It's just been average ever since they won.
Yep, that's right.
There's no other way around it.
Yep, and now Nurse is gone, and possibly VanVleet is gone, and you're talking about a very different era up here. Yeah. We'll come back with our best bets, brought to you by FanDuel. Jays Giants tonight. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, today's best bets powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. I'm on 2 games tonight. 2 plays tonight. I like the over the Jays-Giants game tonight. 9 runs total. I think there will be runs produced. Dome open tonight. Chris Bassett has not been great lately. You got an opener on the San Fran side of things. And the under in the Brewers-Mets. You got Scherzer on the mound. 8.5 total runs. I don't think there'll be a ton of run production. Mets-Brewers tonight. Over Jays, under Mets game tonight. Today's best bets powered by FanDuel. The first inning means as much as the ninth when you bet baseball on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Please play responsibly. Must be 19 plus and physically located in Ontario. I would suggest NFL players do not do that. You see the ruling came down for a few players today. Getting suspended indefinitely for betting. Some of these guys
don't come at us with, what did you think was going to happen with all the betting stuff? Betting's been around for a long time.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not because of the rise of the popularity of or being involved in sports a lot more. It's been around forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I always made the argument that if gambling were legalized, what will happen is it'll be regulated. Right. So what you'll do is you'll have an easier time finding out who's actually betting on the games, and that's exactly what's happened. These guys are using their names in betting on the app, and the NFL's like, okay, we'll take that.
Oh, my God. Wouldn't you want to sit and buy a burner phone and let your buddy do the dirty work, and you're just sitting beside him? How stupid are you?
Exactly. Or guess what? There are bookies still around. I'm not advocating for that.
I know, but
they do still exist.
To think that you wouldn't get tracked back to you is absolutely asinine.
Well,
asinine.
One guy on the Titans got suspended, I think 6 games. He wasn't betting on the NFL, but he was making bets on other sports at the stadium, and that's not allowed.
Yeah.
So, which I think that's so stupid.
It's like anything else, Hayes. It's stupid, it's goofy, but you know it, so why you doing it?
That's right. And the player, he did come out and say, I got to own it, man. I was sitting there in my stall, I was betting on an NBA game or something.
Yeah.
And the NFL's like, we have it. Like, we know the IP address, we have it. You were using our Wi-Fi placing a bet. We know it happened.
Yeah, like that one. That one's a little bit like.
But it's not nefarious in terms of like any worry about a guy throwing plays or anything like that.
It's just him betting on a different sport or whatever. But he has to own it.
And it's legal in Tennessee.
Yeah,
but still,
that's still.
Listen, the NFL. They're so in bed with gambling. They always have been. But you cannot allow your players to gamble on the NFL. You can't.
Yeah.
You have to uphold integrity.
Well, yes.
You have to uphold it.
Calling a buddy on the other team, like, how's Mahomes feeling? You know,
can't happen. None of it.
You cannot have it. Like you for the sanctity of the sport and, for gambling for that matter. Like, there is, you're hoping that the lines are legit because the players are just out there playing.
Yeah.
As opposed to up to some sort of funny
always
business.
something funny.
What's the sanctity of appetizers? I was at an event last night with wonderful food, and the food was set up with just appy stations.
I love that.
Dude, I know, but there was a salmon, there was a mac and cheese with fried chicken, there was short ribs, and a pasta station. I did a 4-pack of the salmon. I tripled down on the mac and cheese, a 3-pack on the pastas, and doubled down on the braised ribs. And I think the people were looking at me like, what is the limit of times you can wheel back? The salmon lady was clearly grossed out.
Yeah. You go back there multiple times for salmon. That's a delicacy.
But there's always like some grit grinder that's just building a fence right there.
I know. You get an
That was
offensive
me.
line.
That was you that's building a fence right in front
like
of the athlete.
eating it right at the front of the gate and then just handing the plate over saying, fill it up. She was disgusted.
Yeah, they probably
Crumbs
weren't
on the
anticipating
table.
that, right?
No.
When you don't even, like, you got to go for a courtesy stroll, man. You got to go circle and then
People
pretend.
at Costco at least do one lap around.
Yeah, you got to
before
lap
circle
around and then
back.
play
Or
stupid.
you could do the fake, hey, Billy, you want one of these? Okay, and there's not even anybody there.
Yeah.
And
No
you just,
That is a
Yeah,
good
there's-
move, too.
it is.
That is actually a very good move. Anyway, well, listen, it sounds like it was a great spot. Great food. Shout out. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes for helping today, everyone for tuning in, TV, radio, podcast, web. We appreciate it. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at
4 p.m.
We'll chat then.